Welcome to Merryfield's Gardening Advisor, brought to you by the experts at Merryfield Garden Center. Join us as we discover beautiful plants, new trends, and exciting ideas for your landscape. So let's get growing together. Merryfield's Gardening Advisor, bringing out the best in your garden.
Happy holidays, everyone, and welcome to Merryfield's Gardening Advisor. I'm your host, Debbie Warhurst-Kapp, along with gardening expert David Yost. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm guessing you had a nice Christmas.
I had a wonderful, wonderful Christmas. By the time I got to Christmas Day and have everything done, then it was nice and restful and that type thing.
Good, because the last time I saw Debbie, I was a little worried about her. She was like pushing that last minute
That's right.
Agenda there.
Oh, that's me. At the last minute. Every year it's like, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to be done. I'm going to be ready. Okay, yeah, I was. Kind of.
Okay. Good.
But it was great. How about yours?
Oh, it was very nice. Good. Very nice. Like I say, I was on the road for a little bit.
Right.
But
Santa was good to you?
Yes, he always is.
That's right.
Always is. So I had a fantastic Christmas, but I have to say I'm not too heartbroken to see that it's over, and looking forward to the new year.
Looking forward to 2014. Well, and we want to get you started right in 2014 with your garden, because we've got some great ideas for you. David, you brought some plants for winter interest, right?
Sure did, and I brought a little picture along just to sort of illustrate the point and kind of try to entice everybody into this. Because we know we are into the winter, the holidays are over, and a lot of times we've had some pretty cold weather, even a couple snows out there. So the trees and shrubs, they've pretty much gone into their dormancy, and sometimes things can look pretty drab out there. But in fact, there's a tremendous amount of color that you can incorporate into your landscape if you get a little creative on it. And you can see this is a display we put together. Different berries, different foliage. We're even going to talk about different flowers. These are all plants that you can include in your landscape so it looks beautiful throughout the entire year.
Oh, that's great. Lots of great ideas today. So we've got lots of pictures. So stay tuned, and then in the last two segments we'll be taking your phone calls. So if you got any questions, save them up and give us a call then. Just a couple of quick announcements before we get started. We want to invite you to come in and take advantage of our after Christmas sale at Merryfield Garden Center at all three locations. 40 to 60% off on all the holiday items. So if you want to get an artificial tree for next year, or some lights and ornaments and holiday ribbon, pre-made bows, just all kinds of things. So I understand it was quite a fun day on the day after Christmas.
Yeah, it's been busy the last couple days, but there's still a lot of wonderful things to choose from. I was talking to a customer who was in last year and saying it's almost like getting an extended Christmas, because you come in, you buy things deeply discounted, you pack them away. Then next season, when it's time to decorate, you open it up, and it's almost like opening Christmas gifts, because you've forgotten what you purchased. You discover all these great things, and like say, and at a great savings.
That's great. That's great. Okay, and our winter hours are in effect right now. So at Merryfield Garden Center, we're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m., Sundays from 9 till 5. Now, New Year's Eve will be open till 5, and then we will be open on New Year's Day from 10 to 5. So take advantage of that. While you're there, stop by and pick up our calendar, if you haven't already, our Merryfield Garden Center calendar, which is full of great tips, great pictures, and of course keeps you organized for the whole year. And hot off the press, our seminar schedule for the Winter Spring Series is here, and they start on January 18th, and there is just all kinds of great topics. And then our folks are doing seminars. We've got some great guests. We've got great topics. We've got all kinds of things. Anything you want to highlight there, David?
Well, just, as always, there's a big, diverse group of topics and speakers, and so a lot of interest that's in there. We'll be kicking off. Jonathan Cavalier will be coming from the Smithsonian Institute to talk about orchids. I'll be making a presentation about the gardener's calendar, and then also Regina talking about terrariums as our kickoff, just to give you an idea of the diversity that's there. As Debbie said, and that's at all three of our stores, so you have to kind of pick and choose, but some of them are repeated. Some of the popular ones, like I'll be doing the spring lawn care a couple times, so if you miss it one time, you can catch it at the second one. Right.
If you're on our mailing list, our regular mailing list, you should be getting these probably in the next week, or within the next week or so. I'm not sure exactly when were being mailed. You can pick them up in the stores, and we will be sending an e-blast out with the complete seminar schedule if you're on our email mailing list. So you can go to merryfieldgardencenter.com to sign up for these lists. If you're not on our mailing list already, you'd have to come by and pick it up or get it off the email. And they should be up on the website as well. I haven't checked that. Tina?
I haven't had time to check either, but they should be there. And like I said, you'll be getting more and more details on this as the time gets closer, but they're really just fantastic learning opportunities.
Absolutely.
The winter time is when they're most popular. The rooms fill up to capacity, so we ask that you get there a few minutes early. So it's really is a good time, and it's not like, you know, a big high pressure sales. It's an educational program, and we just know that the more you learn, the more you appreciate gardening, the more engaged and interested you are, the better it's going to be for both of us.
And they're free. It's a great way to learn and get your questions answered and that type of thing, and it's free.
Can't beat that.
Can't beat that. Okay, before we get started on some winter interest, we got something else that's of special winter interest.
It is. I want to talk a little bit about our kiln dried firewood. You know, each year is different. Of course, you know, we had like 20-something degree temperatures there, you know, before Thanksgiving. Last weekend it was 70 degrees. You know, now it's 50 degrees. It's going to be going down.
It's going to be an interesting winter all the way around.
But, you know, we've definitely had some cold days, and I said nothing is more comforting or warming than having that fire in the fireplace while you're entertaining. So one of the things that we do that really does make a difference with our firewood, it is kiln dried, so what we're showing is kind of step by step. We buy the firewood in, you know, wholesale in these huge quantities. We dump it into these metal crates or baskets. Then these crates go into a wood kiln. This thing's about the size of a tractor trailer. To give you an idea, this was originally developed for treating shipping pallets. You may be aware that we have trouble with introducing exotic insects and pests with shipping pallets, so procedures or laws went into place that they all have to be heat treated. Well, we were one of the very first adopters to take this technology and adapt it to using for firewood. So we can put the firewood in there. It's all computerized. There's a little probe that gets inserted into the wood, and we dry it down to the optimum burning or optimum moisture content. So we dry it down to about a 15% moisture content. That takes about 3 days, and essentially what we're doing is we're evaporating all the moisture or most of that moisture out of the wood. Because even when you buy what people are calling seasoned wood, a lot of times that can be 25% moisture or so. So by drying it, getting the moisture out of there, that gives you wood that's ready to burn. It gives you more heat energy because the moisture's been taken out of there. There's less risk with creosote or any of those kind of impurities accumulating on the inside of your chimney. And this is what we're looking at as the finished product as we take it out of the wood kiln. So it really is a better quality of wood than you're going to find anyplace else. And it's hardwood, it's mostly oak, you know, maybe you'll find a little hickory in there. And then what we do, which again is, I see some people kind of skip over this, then all this gets piled up and stockpiled, but then we hand measure it. So what you're looking at right there is a quarter of a cord and an eighth of a cord in those smaller racks. So we literally measure these out. So when you purchase from us a cord of wood, a half a cord of wood, a quarter of a cord, an eighth of a cord, whatever it is, that's a measured hand stacked unit that you're purchasing. So we really can assure you both the quality of the wood that's there, it's ready to burn, it's more efficient, it's safer, and you're getting the quantity that you paid for.
Absolutely. Well, and I can tell you from experience, it's wonderful to have that kiln dried firewood because it starts so easily, it burns nicely, and it's ready to roll.
Yeah, so don't wait till the next snowstorm or anything like that. You know, go ahead and buy what you can use now, you know, stockpile a little bit of it, so when you do get snowed in, you can sit down with the comfort of that fire.
Exactly. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and come back and talk about some plants with winter interest, so stay tuned.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us on Merrifield's Gardening Advisor. We're talking about plants that are going to add winter interest to your landscape. Now, this clearly is a summertime view, and this, of course, is a lot of what we think about when we visualize gardens in our mind, and we're sitting down and we're thinking about our garden. We're thinking about being lush and green and having, here we've got all the walls and the structures that's in there, the arbor in the background and some flowers and the color. But I tell you, gardens are all year round. So take this same image and we'll take a look at it in the wintertime. So what happens, if we can move forward here, our next picture, you can see the exact same angle, same garden, but takes on a completely different appearance as we go into the winter months. Of course, the first thing that you'll notice is the color is gone. Everything basically becomes tones of gray, white, black in there. Gone are the lush greens and all those type of things. So the element of color sort of disappears or fizzles out on us in the wintertime. But one of the things that comes forward that you really start to see is the structure. You start to look in here and you can see the architectural elements of it, where we've got the walls and the walks and the arbors that are in there. And also this happens with our plants as well. As they start to shed and drop their leaves, the structure of the tree itself comes in here. So we're looking at here, this is a sycamore. It's a native plant. It's a fantastic landscape tree, except that it does get quite large, as you can see here. I mean, 50, 60, 70, 80 feet tall. So it's not one that you're going to find in a real suburban home landscape, but you'll see these used in parking lots and harsh environments like that. They tolerate poorly drained or low oxygen soils. So whether it's a wet, soggy area or compacted parking lot environment, they do well. But again, what you really start to see is, again, that branching structure, the form of the tree. In this case, it also has very interesting bark. So the bark has this peeling, exfoliating characteristic. It has that smooth white underlayer in there, and so it really starts to add a lot of interest, even more interest in the wintertime than it does during the summertime. Let's see what's next. Okay, another favorite for the landscape, a fantastic plant for the summer landscape, is Crape Myrtle. Crape Myrtle, we grow it primarily because it has beautiful blooms in here. You get blooms and flowers of almost any color it's imaginable, starting out in July, August, into September. Nice fall color. So I mean, this is a tree that adds so much to the landscape. Again, it's hot, sunny, dry conditions. But this is the picture probably is taken in July, maybe early August. Let's take a look at what Crape Myrtle does for us as we go into the wintertime. Same thing that we were talking about almost like earlier with the sycamore. So it's the same plant, but even after the leaves are gone, the flowers are gone, you start to really see that structure in here. In this case, this multi-stem branching that's in there kind of cascades out there. And of course, I always like pictures when there's a little snow on there, because that really accentuates and highlights it. But the other really phenomenal quality or characteristic of this plant for the wintertime is, again, the bark. So I'm talking about the form, the structure, the bark characteristics. Again, that peely, exfoliating bark that can look so beautiful, especially when a little bit of sun captures it. So again, we looked at sycamore, Crape Myrtle, and I've even forgotten what's coming up next. More examples, again, of looking at the structure and the bark and interest that's in there. So right here we're looking at the river birch. Again, this is a native tree of ours. Again, you'll see they get quite large, but they're more upright in their growth. So this is used a lot of times in suburban landscapes because it doesn't get as sprawling and wide out there. It does tend to have this multi-stem branching characteristic. But again, so you see the form and structure of it, but in the wintertime, if you look up close again, has this very interesting peeling, exfoliating bark that's in there. So again, this would be another tree that we could add for winter interest, and we'll just kind of keep going through this. So I started out with a few examples kind of on this tangent of seeing all the beautiful qualities that the bark can add to trees and shrubs that we tend to overlook. So I just put 3 of them up here. You know, look at the coral bark maple, paper bark maple, red twig dogwood. All of these are grown, again, primarily for their winter interest and winter appeal that's in there. So that is one way that you can start to add that element of color to an otherwise drab landscape. And we'll just kind of continue through with this. So the next thing is, of course, you know, I talk about the beauty of winter and all the gorgeous color that shows up when the snow is out there. You know, the contrasts are there. It's not always a good thing, is it? At times when we get this heavy wet snow like we had just even a couple weeks ago, or when we get loaded up with ice and snow, just the sheer weight of it can kind of cause this tree to collapse. This is a Coosa dogwood that you can see loaded up with snow, and it just kind of flops over. Now, trees are amazingly resilient, and I can tell you this tree, once that snow, as it gradually melted off of there, it stood back up there and it's still there and it looks perfectly normal, didn't even break a single branch on it. But that's not always the case. There are some trees that have weak, brittle wood. This is particularly a problem sometimes in Japanese maples that capture, and then these branches can actually split or crack in there. If that happens to you, not all is lost. A lot of times these branches can be repaired, but if you're going to do that, it's something that you need to act on right away as soon as possible that damage occurs. So you can see here, these are pretty severe cracks and splits that are occurring in there. Really, I would almost give up on that, expect the plant to be lost. But in fact, I was working with a homeowner in this case. They weren't ready to give up, and thank goodness they weren't, because I was wrong. We went in, we discussed this, and this is repaired by literally just drilling a hole, a pilot hole through that split, fastening it together with a bolt. And this tree, that wood fused back together, it continues to live right up till today, and if you look at it, you can't even see that there's a bit of damage in it. Now that hardware is left in place. That becomes basically embedded in the tree. It becomes a part of the tree. But so if you run into these problems, you can go to our website, and on our website, under the instructional videos, we have how to repair a broken branch, and it will show you step by step in there. I still go back. It's actually the very first video we produced in-house and put on the internet. It's a few years old, but I still like going back in there to see how it's done. So again, those are a few trees for winter interest, a couple things you might keep an eye on if you run into that problem. And like I say, if you run into those splits or cracks, see that at MerryfieldGardenCenter.com. Going to take a quick commercial break right now, and we come back. I've got more plants to add beauty to your winter landscape.
There we are. I hope you're getting ready for the new year. Can't believe it's going to be 2014 in a couple of days.
Just on my drive in, I realized, you know what, I'm just going to take the New Year's resolutions from the last 2 years that I have not fulfilled,
yes.
and I'm going to repeat them again this year.
That's right.
This
we used to talk about that, but
2015 is going to be, I'm actually going to follow through on them.
2015? How about 2014?
Oh, am I getting mixed up? Yeah, planning ahead. Okay, 2014.
Okay, we'll be ready. That's right.
I've been working on a 2014 calendar. I'm mixed up what year it is.
That's true. We're always a little bit of ahead. So, okay, we looked at some of the beautiful structure of some of these plants in the winter time and how it holds the snow. I love the way you mentioned having snow on the pictures. I love seeing snow on the plants. But there's so much else that make it so interesting. The berries, the evergreen, the flowers. There's just so much to talk about.
Exactly. And like I said, you know, anything you can do to add color is going to just pop out at you,
right?
And everything. So that's why we're always looking for ways to add color. And there are quite a few things out there, but you know, you actually have to plan for it. You have to look for it. You know, put that effort into it. So of course, the Winterberry hollies are an all-time favorite. And so we looked at color in terms of colorful bark, but berries, you know, so anything that has a berry on it is going to add interest into it. Of course, these winterberries are probably the most dramatic. It is a true holly. We always think of the evergreen hollies, especially, you know, during the holidays, but this is a true holly. It's simply a deciduous one that sheds its leaves. So it's a native plant, so it's adapted to our environment. They're very easy to care for. They naturally grow along stream valleys and stuff, so even tolerate a little bit of poor drainage that's in there. And they have been selected and developed really to hold their berries pretty late in the winter. And you can expect them to hold their berries pretty well into January. By some point in time, they reach maturity, and then the birds swoop down and consume them all. And some people are upset about that, but I'm like, hey, that's one of the benefits from having it, you know, to provide for the birds.
It just makes a bright statement against that white snow.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Now, of course, like all hollies, there are male and female plants that are separate. So when you're planting them, the female is going to produce the berries, but you want to make sure that somewhere in your landscape there you incorporate a male to serve as a cross-pollinator. They've also come up with different colors. Now, this is one that's called Winter's Gold. You can see the leaves are still on there. They're starting to yellow. They'll drop off of there and kind of persist with that sort of yellowish berry that's in there. So there's a lot of different varieties. Little ones that will stay down to about 3 feet tall. Big ones can grow up to 15 feet tall. And like I said, and variety as far as berry color goes in there. So that's a great one. Another one that I think can add that interest of berries in there, this is Beautyberry. What it is, you can see obviously the one that has the leaves on it, that's in late summer, really as their berries are at their peak. These leaves start to fade off of there, and then the kind of pink color is the same plant, the exact same plant, but those berries start to shift or change color with the cold weather, and then eventually they do just kind of deteriorate and fall off of there. There's also a white berried form of this. So again, berries, a great way to add that interest. And they're tough and durable. Nandina, which is also called Heavenly Bamboo, we'll see that coming up. This is a fantastic plant, grown as much for its foliage, but some of them also produce very nice berries. Again, you have to know what you're looking for. I even brought some examples in we'll look at later in the program. We might sell 8 or 9 different varieties of Nandina, and there are probably 15 of them out there on the marketplace at least. The short, compact ones tend to be grown more for their foliage, but some of the larger, more upright ones will give you good berry production.
Right.
So you really need to understand what you're looking for. You need to talk to us. If it's berries that you want for the winter landscape or for decorating, you need to tell us, and we'll steer you towards the varieties that will give you good berries. If you're looking for something staying small and compact, then let us know, and we can give you some of that beautiful foliage. Or even combinations of both.
That's right. We're here to please.
Exactly. But they're self-pollinating. You only need one of them and you get berries, but they do fall to the ground sometimes and germinate, which is something to be aware of as well. Now also, foliage color. This is where evergreens come into the picture, and we know this is a very, very diverse group of plants. We talked about a lot of detail just a few weeks ago, so I just wanted to give them, unfortunately, a little bit of a passing recognition, but they really deserve a lot of attention that's in there. So you can see all the different hues in there of gold and green and blue and the different forms and shapes. And again, this is a picture taken in the middle of the winter. So just mix and match and put them in there, whatever kind of pattern or color you're looking for. You can also see evergreens that can have very interesting weeping form. So in this case, we're starting to combine everything where we've got a very distinctive form, we've got interesting needle color, it's evergreen, makes a nice accent. So this is the Weeping Atlas Cedar that's in, and that's put in our display gardens right at the front of the store. And then a couple other things, because I know I'm going to run out of time, but also I don't want to skip perennials. Perennials can add some interest in the wintertime, even though they are dormant. A lot of times the grasses, or in this case the grass coupled with the sedum, if you choose to leave the seed head and stems up there, that adds a lot of value. There are also evergreen perennials, so that they have the beautiful foliage on there. And of course, in this case, when we talk about the hellebores, it's an evergreen, it's a perennial, and it flowers in the wintertime. Now these would normally be flowering a lot of times in February, maybe even late January. This was brought into bloom a little bit early, you know, as a Christmas kind of item. But that shows you the kind of beautiful flowers in their evergreen foliage, deer resistant. It likes shaded environments as long as you have reasonably well-drained soil. I also brought in a Dianthus, or Carnation. Now this has been in our greenhouse, that's why it's flowering. You wouldn't expect it to be flowering, but I thought, hey, that's got to cheer you up here in the wintertime, you know, as we're going into late December, see beautiful flowers on there. But this also has this beautiful evergreen foliage, so you will get this blue-green coloration, almost looks like grass with that narrow, fine texture. So even these perennials can give you interest in the wintertime.
And it's nice to be able to, you know, at our garden centers, you can go into our perennial houses and and shop, and you know, they're protected from the cold. They're protecting you from the weather, so you can really shop nicely.
Now they're unheated greenhouses, so I mean these are hardy plants to go in your garden, but as you said, it's much more comfortable to shop for them, and they do stay protected, so they look a little bit nicer.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that there are some blooming plants over the winter months. So that's great.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many there are if you came for a walk through there right now.
Great. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and come back with more ideas. Stay tuned. We talked about flowers when we talked about the perennials in our last segment, but you've got some more flowers to share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Believe it or not, there are some trees and shrubs that will give you a little bit of color in the winter months. And so we're going to begin by talking about camellias. You know, camellias are the obvious one to go to, I mean, because they're so gorgeous and so beautiful, and there's so many of them and blooming at different times. Now what happens, there's Camellia Sasanqua, which tends to flower in that kind of maybe October, November, December time period, and then the japonicas can pick up in that kind of even late February, March into April time period. So again, you can have an extended bloom season by sort of picking, selecting, working a diversity and a variety that's in there. So I just thought this I don't even know the variety name on this one, just sort of found it buried in the snow again. But a couple I can tell you they're really popular. We'll get a look at these coming up here. There's a couple varieties. You can say Abou and Yuletide. These are both Camellia Sasanqua varieties, which means that they are in that fall, early winter type of bloom season. So they'll start flowering for you usually in October, kind of go into their peak in November, continuing flowering into December depending on just how the weather does. So Yuletide is an extremely popular one for good reason. It's probably about as close to a true red as you're going to find in camellias there. So single bloom, bright yellow stamens, really well-deserved, you know, for its popularity. It's well-deserves that recognition. I like that Pinkaboo. What a great name. Well, and Pinkaboo is kind of a offshoot. It was found as a sport off of Yuletide. Really? Right, so they are closely related in there, but you can see it's got a beautiful kind of soft pink coloration that's in there. And those are just a couple personal favorites I put out. Again, if you come in the garden center, you'll see different varieties, and you can get them at that different bloom time. So you can have color through the winter time. Now when it gets really, really cold, if they're not protected, you know, those flowers get damaged and they drop off. But you know, you get to where you appreciate every little bit you have out there in the winter time. And who knows what this winter's going to be like. So far, it's been kind of up and down temperature-wise. Yeah, exactly, and the flowers kind of up and down based on that as well. Let's go on here and see what we have in our next picture. Okay, another personal favorite of mine is the witch hazel. Of course, witch hazel, there are native witch hazels, there's also Asian witch hazels, and then these are some hybrids of the two that are in there. So things like Arnold's Promise and Helena give us larger, showier flowers. Some of these are fragrant. And again, sort of I'm going to call February is sort of a peak bloom season for those. So this is definitely a plant that gives us color through the entire season, because I love it blooming out there, you know, in the late winter, very, very early spring. It gives us a flower color, but these also have nice structure and form to it. They also can give us beautiful fall coloration. So it's a plant you see that I can feature over and over and over. I put one in my front yard as a specimen because it's just right up there at the top of the list with me. I went with Arnold's Promise. That's what's in the picture there because I like the bright yellow and it's got a nice fragrance, but they're all fantastic. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about the Edgeworthia. This is a plant that's fairly unknown. It's hasn't really been used that much in the landscape trade. It's in the same family as Daphne that many of you might be familiar with. I would call this kind of a specimen plant. It is a shrub that's going to peak out at about 6 foot tall, maybe 6 foot wide. What happens is you can see the buds hang on there right now, and they look like bells that are on there, and they'll carry those buds all through the winter time, which looks absolutely fantastic and adds a lot of interest. But then late winter, very early spring, again probably more towards March time period, those flowers open up to those yellow tubes that you see, and again emit just a wonderful, delightful fragrance
so nice.
as well.
So nice to have in the garden.
It is. So that's one. And winter jasmine. Exactly. Winter jasmine, it's a low kind of drooping shrub, as you can see there. This is an excellent use for it, hanging over top of a wall. A lot of people mistake it for the forsythia because it looks like forsythia, except it blooms earlier. You'll see flowers showing up on this sometimes as early as January and really going to peak blooms in February, maybe into March time period. The stems on it are also green, so that adds a little bit of, it's not truly an evergreen, but because it has the green stems, it almost gives a little bit of that evergreen interest. So again, all these plants have their place in the landscape and definitely come to the center in the wintertime. Now, we had talked both about Nandina and the red twig dogwoods for interesting foliage, berries, and bark. I just brought a couple examples in to take that conversation a bit further. Down here in front of me, this is a Nandina that's called lemon lime. I wanted to show this off because it's a new variety. It was just recently introduced. Traditionally, Nandinas go sort of a deep red, like this one next to it, which is called Firepower. Firepower is popular because it really probably has the brightest red and some of the most dramatic coloration. You're going in the red range with it. But then next to it, of course, lemon lime is an introduction to give us that chartreusey yellow color. So new growth comes out sort of a yellow, it matures to a green. So that's why I was saying these aren't going to give you the berries, but they give you a lot of interesting foliage color. A lot you can do with Nandina through the wintertime. And behind it is a red twig dogwood. And on these dogwoods and maples that have the colorful bark, most of that color is brightest and most intense when that bark is in its juvenile form. As it ages, as it matures, sometimes the color on there, the bark starts to form and the color is not as intense. So again, depending on how you want to manage it, a lot of these go through a heavy rejuvenation pruning, and we'll do that, let's say in March. We'll cut them back severely. That forces a lot of new growth to come up, and that keeps that bark looking bright and vibrant in there. Or if you leave it alone, it continues to grow big, it gets into a larger shrub, but as the bark forms, the colors start to fade. Again, lots of ways that we can use plants to add interest, but there's other ways that we can add interest to our winter landscape as well. We'll go back to our pictures.
Statuary makes such a difference, especially there in the wintertime with a little bit of snow on that sweet little girl. So don't forget about all those extra touches that make all the difference in the world. So wanted to let you know when we come back, we're going to be taking your phone calls. So if you have any gardening questions, please give us a call, 703-387-1046, and we'll see you in just a couple minutes. There you see our number, 703-387-1046. So if you have any gardening questions, please give us a call. We'd love to talk to you. And David, our first caller is Beverly, who's calling from Seabrook, Maryland. Hi, Beverly.
Hi, and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Good morning.
You too. Did you have a good holiday?
Yes, I did, and I love your show. I watch it every Saturday. Have been watching for years.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. You all ready for New Year's?
Well, yes, I am.
What can we do for you today?
Okay, yes. David was talking about Nandinas, and I want to know which one you would recommend for the berries.
Well, the very best one, if it's berries that you want, is just a straight species, Nandina Domestica, not hybridized, no varieties, just normal Nandina Domestica. But let me alert you, the thing is, Nandina Domestica, it tends to be a tall, leggy plant. So as it grows and matures, they can get 6, even 8 foot tall. They tend to shed some of their lower leaves and branches, and eventually in the landscape, they get sort of this leggy appearance to it. But they are going to give you your very best berry production of any of them that are out there. And you can kind of manage the tall, leggy growth by periodically doing what I call selective thinning, and we may have a chance to talk about this more in some of our pruning shows. But what I would do is in early spring, around March, you can go in and thin out some of the older branches, and that pushes new branches to come up, and that's a way to restrict or limit the height on it. or just plant it in a location that height's not going to be an issue. And I should mention, Nandina does not need cross-pollination or anything. You could, even if you just stuck one of them in there, it would still form berries.
And is it one that doesn't grow as tall? I'm sorry.
Now the shorter, more compact ones are really not going to do near as well for you in berry production. The one I showed in the pictures from my own yard, it's a variety, it's called Plum Passion. It produces berries, but not as well as just the straight Nandina Domestica does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just know that ahead of time, plant for it in your garden, and it's a tough, durable, reliable plant.
And real quick, so in pruning it, so it's similar to the way I would prune a hydrangea. You know, the older ones take out some.
Yes, actually it's a lot more reliable, and you don't need to prune it until it starts to get leggy and becomes a problem. So that's probably going to be several years down the road.
Much.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Okay, and the same to you.
And a Happy New Year. Okay, let's see. Ann is calling from Springfield. Hi, Ann.
Hello.
How are you today?
Good morning.
Good, thank you.
Good. What's your question?
I wonder if you can transplant volunteer crepe myrtles this time of year.
Oh yes, you can. When you get a weekend like this, I heard they were talking about temperatures maybe even as much as 55 degrees today when it's not too cold and miserable to work the soil. Is a good time to transplant them. Basically, you want to transplant them anytime during their dormant season. So that could be, January, February, March, even early April time period. You just need to find an opportunity where the ground has a little bit of moisture, it's not soaking wet, it's not bone dry, and it's soft enough to dig. So whenever the weather cooperates is a good time. They transplant well, they're tough, they're durable. Just move it out to a nice sunny where it gets good sun, at least 6 to 8 hours a day of sun.
And do they ever not bloom? I mean, the volunteers, are they always going to bloom? Because I thought one time somebody told me maybe they're not really crepe myrtles or something like that.
No, it should flower for you. Now, there's no way to predict what color that bloom is going to be. It's not going to be necessarily true to the parent. So you might plant a pink one and it turns out flowering white, or you might plant a white one and it turns out flowering lavender. So the bloom color is unknown, but it should flower. It's not a grafted plant, or there should be no problems like that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks for the call.
Okay, let's see. Our next caller is Jeannie, who's calling from Indian Head. Hi, Jeannie.
Hi.
How are you today?
Show.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays to you.
Me too.
My mother loves camellias, and if I get a few camellias from your nursery, should I replicate the same environment, or is it okay to plant them in the ground? Or
do you mind turning your TV down? We're having a little hard time hearing your question.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is down.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, I heard your question. Yeah, that's a little better now. The basically, to answer your question, I mean, the camellias, they like to be, they'll grow in either sun or shade, but they're best somewhere in the middle. So to me, the perfect location for a camellia would be where it's getting maybe at least 2 to 4 hours of sunlight a day, maybe a little bit protected from the real scorching heat of the midday sun. It likes that moist but well-drained soil. It's not going to tolerate really dense, heavy clay. So if you've got that environment, you'll need to enhance the soil, adding a little bit of compost to make sure it has reasonably good drainage. And it should be a little bit protected from really exposed winter winds. Because it's a broadleaf evergreen, it's out there. If it's in a real open, exposed area, then you can get some winter damage on it. So if it's up kind of protected by a fence or a house where that buffers a little bit for the elements of the wind, gets a little bit of shade on it, that kind of moist, well-drained area, so it needs a little bit of coddling on the location. But if you can do that, they have been bred and developed and selected for reliable, dependably winter hardy. Of course, camellias were traditionally a southern plant, but these varieties have been around for the last 10, 20 years, are tough and durable, had very good success with them. So I wouldn't hesitate for planting them out there in Indian Head. They should do great.
Okay, but I specifically wanted to know if it will go into shock if you take them out of the greenhouse and just put them in the ground?
No, these are not heated greenhouses. We just put them there, unheated greenhouses. We actually have a retractable roof on it. We open the roof up during the snow. So they are already acclimated and adapted to the cold weather.
Okay.
It just shelters them a little bit from some of the buffering winds. You know, it gives them a little bit of insulation, but no, they are not going to go into any kind of shock or trauma.
Okay.
Again, if you are planting now, you got to kind of keep an eye on the watering, because most of the winter damage we get is from neglecting the watering and people allowing them to dry out. That's the real issue with them.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Happy New Year. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Bonnie and Pamela are going to be we're going to be talking to them as soon as we get back, so hang tight and we'll be right back with you. Let's get right back to our callers. Bonnie is calling from Kensington. Thanks for holding, Bonnie. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How's everybody over with your place?
Oh, we're great.
We're doing fantastic.
Well, that's great. Okay, to get to the point, first of all, thanks for your show. I enjoy it every morning. And I really want to thank the people who call with questions, because I learn a tremendous amount from them and your answers to them.
Oh, yeah, I enjoy this part of the show as well.
That's great. Okay, maybe you can help me with my much too big for its location, Hinoki Cypress.
That's going to be a problem.
That's what I
You don't want
thought.
to hear that, David.
Yeah. No, Hinoki Cypress, well, one of it goes back, you know, and this is all hindsight for you now. I go back, there's so many varieties and everything. You know, ideally you select a compact variety or one that's going to stay within bounds. Once they get overgrown, it's very difficult to significantly reduce their size. You can only prune them as far back as there's green on there. If you look at the branch of a Hinoki Cypress, say, okay, pretend I'm a Hinoki Cypress and these are my branches. You know, it's all bare inside here, and then you've got the green foliage out here. Your pruning is restricted to out here where it's green. If I prune back in here to where it's just bare wood, that's not going to fill back in. That's going to leave a bald spot that's forever there. So you can only diminish their size by a little bit, only as far as the green goes. If you go further back into the plant, then where you're just going to be stuck with what you see. It's not going to fill back in like, say, a holly does.
Okay.
So the best time to prune them, let me say this, the best time to prune them is going to be in March, just before the new growth starts on there. And you can go in there and you can selectively thin it, you can prune it back, you can control the size, but you kind of have to stay within that green zone.
Did that help?
Yeah.
All right. Here's the short-term problem-solving question. Could I just cut off the top? It was planted probably 40, 50 years ago, before I got to know this plant, right next to my front door, and now it's up top pushing on the gutters.
Right. So you may have to do something.
It really obscures the light for coming into the front door. So my inclination is just to cut off the top 3 feet of it and see what happens.
And you can do that, but it's not going to kill the tree, but you just have to accept. Once you do that,
it's going to be brown in the middle.
And that's done. You can't go back. You know, there's no second choices. You know, it takes away from the form of the tree. You can get these side shoots that sprout up and everything. But sometimes I totally understand where you're coming from. Sometimes that's just what you need to do. But just understand ahead of time that that's going to be sort of the consequences of it.
Yeah, I understand, and thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you for the call. Take care. Bye-bye. Happy New Year. Okay, let's see. Pamela is calling from Fredericksburg. Hi, Pamela.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How's everything
Doing
in
nice.
Fredericksburg
Doing
today?
great.
Everything's fine.
Good.
It's starting to warm up and everything. But my question is about my 7-foot rhododendron has become very leggy, so all the leaves are at the end of each of the branches. And with the snow that we had, a couple of the branches broke because of the weight of the snow. So my question is, when should I prune it and how much?
Okay, well, if you have broken branches from the snow damage, I'd go ahead and prune those off now.
Okay.
You know, if it's a main trunk, you know, you might be able to repair it like we talked about the maples. But for the most part, I'd say broken branches, prune them off now. Then the best time to prune them is going to be after it's flowering. So let's pretend that usually your rhododendrons flower in May. As soon as the blossoms are finished, then in that late May, June time period is when you would go in to do your pruning. Again, rhododendrons don't respond real well to vigorous pruning. If you decide to drastically cut it back and reduce its size, you are taking a risk. I'm going to say you have about 50-50 chance of success. Okay. Sometimes they fill back in, sometimes they don't. So I would prefer, let's say as we get into that late May, June time period after blooming, is to go in and gradually reduce it, thin it out, you know, drop it down a little bit in height at that time. You may come back the following year, do a little thinning and cutting back, and you would gradually reduce the size over a period of 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
If that's not practical and you need to just go in and chop it down all at once, you can try it, but I give you 50-50 odds of success.
Yeah, I don't want to chop it all down. It's beautiful, but it has, you know, it's just the flowers and the leaves are all around the edge.
Right, and that happens with them, so just kind of sit tight for now, enjoy the blooming. When it's done flowering, go in there and let's say take it back by 25%, thin out some of the branches. Next year we'll do the same thing. The year after that we'll do the same, and then that becomes routine maintenance rather than letting it get to this point.
When you say 25%, that's just cutting
of the total growth. If you look at now, just a ballpark, you're going to reduce the total growth by about 25%.
Okay.
Great. Thanks so much, Pamela.
Right. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Okay, let's talk to Carol, who's calling from Springfield. Hi, Carol.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Just got a couple
well.
minutes left. Do you have a quick question?
I do. I have a 35-foot tall white pine, and I pruned it about 10 feet up to raise the canopy.
Right.
And when that ice storm came, I lost all these branches. It was like a top branch fell onto another one, and they all dropped off.
Right.
And I had found out afterwards that you're not supposed to prune them like that because the lower branches support the upper ones, and then they don't break off. So what can I do now?
Not a whole lot.
Okay.
I'm all this bad news today. What happens on conifers, though, like pines and spruce, they don't have buds on the interior. They're not able to regenerate. So this is back to what I'm saying. Once you create a bald spot, once you cut that branch off, that's done. That's not going to fill back in. So at this point, you know, you can go in, cut back the branches that are damaged, remove the ones that are there. The tree's probably going to be misshapen, but then fingers crossed, and over the years gradually kind of build some kind of form or structure back into shape. But once you get past the green wood, once you get back in that old growth, it's not going to fill back in.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great New Year's, and a great New Year's to everybody. My apologies to Diana, who was calling from Martinsburg, West Virginia. We got all states covered today. We didn't get you on the air, but stay on the line. We can answer your question. Thank you for all these great ideas. So we hope you will join us next week. We're going to be talking about the educated gardener, where we're going to be kind of highlighting what we're going to be talking about in the seminars coming up. So hope you have a great week, a very safe and happy New Year's, and we'll see you next time.